How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video. And today, guys, what the brain do is the Cyberdark video we've all been waiting for. And I am joined today by Alex Mondlak. I do really appreciate you for coming out today because you love Cyber as much as I love Striker. And this is really cool when you find somebody who really has a passion for a deck. Alex is just such a great player at this game, and he has a lot of really good theory. It was really funny at the case tourney because we realized we were playing the same tech card, especially being shared ride, being so good in this format. And even at the table, we were like, wow, you're playing that too? Like, it was really cool. So if you don't know who Alex is, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them who you are and what you've done in the game.
All right, so my name's Alex Mondlak, and I've been playing the game for well over 10 years competitively now, ever since I was in middle school. And most notably, in like recent history, people kind of got to know me for playing Cybers a lot. That all began with YCS Chicago, where I had to go up against Simo in the feature match and made it all the way to top 8, and that was like during the format where Danger Thunder got introduced and Azathoth combo came out in Luna Light. So ever since then, like, I got several day twos, like I believe it was like 5 day twos within between 2019 around that time frame, and then like 2 or 3 regional top 8s off the cuff, try and recall. And so I've been playing this deck for quite a while competitively. Unfortunately, it's yielded some pretty good results here and there. And so, in light of the structure deck, I came across eventually theory crafted into, well, the deck that's going to be shown, kind of explained, and most recently won the case tournament.
So again, I do really appreciate you for being here today, and there's actually a really nice spreadsheet that Alex had made that I put into my slides today, just kind of showing off what happens and like the general combo lines. So I do hope that you all enjoy that. This is a big thing that I've been asked for the past like week, so we've been kind of just working on it and figuring out how we're going to do it. So I'm very happy to be able to present this to you. This is going to be a lot of fun. So just to kind of start things off though, by looking at what we have on our screen, we all know that Cyberdark Core is a very strong Yu-Gi-Oh card, and the amount of advantage that you can gain off of it is pretty crazy. So Alex, if you want to start off with that first slide and just kind of talk about your starter play going like core into realm into cannon, and just kind of talk about what that starter does for you in the deck.
All right, yeah. So basically, core is a very important starter because you have a lot of versatility with what you can add with it compared to other starters. Like, compared to other starters in a game where Stratos can only add monsters, core can add either an extender or a disruption through the trap. And that's like very relevant in the case of Cyberdarks, where in this case, in this slide, you see core goes in a realm, which goes into cannon. It's kind of important if you're doing this line, which is the basic bread and butter play, that you do it this way for kind of what it segues into. The reason why it has to be realm into cannon specifically is that you do try to utilize cannon's mill. Like, if you were to attempt to add claw can only add spells and traps. And it should be noted, because I see a lot of Cyberdark players mess this up, cannon cannot add claw. Cannon only adds Cyberdark machines. Like, the amount of like dueling book replays I come across that someone was sending me where they go, cannon add claw. I wish you can do that, but you can't. So it's gotta be cannon specifically for what it leads into next.
So I also really like core too, just because if you get board wiped, then yeah, at least you do have a monster to go back into as well, just because core can just banish from the grave, which is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you'll see too, with the way that he plays the deck and the way that the list is that you don't have to go into like the towers play. You don't have to go into like some crazy like OTK. It's all about tempo, and that's one thing that I really love in a deck. So you're gonna kind of see that as we go on here.
Oh yeah, I agree. Basically, this deck I really do consider to be a mid-range deck. Like, I took lots of inspiration from meta decks, in particular Tri Brigade was a huge one.
Oh, I'm sure that plays a lot similar.
Oh yeah, like the end result's very similar. Going second, Sky Striker. It wasn't necessarily meta, but they were like a huge inspiration. Then Shadal and Folk was a huge inspiration, but as we kind of go through the lines, it's going to become way more apparent. So, kind of like moving on to the next slide, though,
Yep.
there's something very important regarding canon. In regards to canon, what do you add off the canon? You'll notice, and if you've seen GGYGO's previous video, I don't play Chimera, like as GG mentioned. So none of these lines are going to involve Chimera. I don't really foresee it in the future unless Cyberdarks get more support that makes Chimera broken. So what you try to add though is the OG Cyberdarks. You do not play Keel because Keel's only unique effect is a Sparks. And so since they both become 24, right, there's like a very distinct choice you gotta make. And usually the common factor that affects that choice is, oh, if I can't attack over something, I'm gonna grab Horn. And the reason why is for the other option where if I can't attack over something, I reserve Edge for that. So if you know you got a clear shot of just being able to attack over something, and then, do the damage and get a mill off, having the Edge for the crackback just in case if things don't go your way is very huge. And after you get the equip, you proceed to battle phase, depending on who you rolled with, either Horn or Edge.
So just to be clear, if you cannot attack over, you use Edge.
Yes, to be absolutely clear, like if they got a full board of just like 2,500 guys or higher, like you're just like, all right, no, just swing directly, avoid all of that because all you care about is getting your mill off.
Right.
And so once you reach in a battle phase, you proceed to attack with your Cyberdark. And during damage calculation, for those that are unfamiliar with canon, it's a foolish burial. And that just automatically brings up the ceiling to what I'm trying to do with this deck through the roof. Like any card that's hypothetically good with foolish is good with canon by proxy.
True.
However, the two main cards I found to be less bricky but also provide huge benefit are Gizmic and Golem Lord. And usually how I decide between the two goes in a variety of factors. Usually it depends on how well their board is just cleared up. Like if I board broke them and I know Apollo is gonna hurt them or Underworld Goddess, which will be shown later, I usually mill Gizmek. And the reason why is Gizmek can come back during your turn, punch, you make your IP, but then the Gizmek can come back during the opponent's turn. And that is huge because you usually have your other body on field, which is the Cyberdark equipped with cannon still. You usually want to link with Core and Gizmek for that. And a lot of people don't really think about that with Gizmek, like unless you play in 2019 with Orcus, where you literally would see someone have IP on field, just an IP, but then they'll have like Dingrisu and Gray or Gizmek. Like I've seen a good handful of people forget that line of play, but it's a huge one.
So just to kind of back up a little bit here so we can kind of go on the line of the combo as well. So sending that Eldritch Golden Lord, you had said that it's really good because you can send the cannon and draw, whereas the Gizmic just gives you that additional attack.
Yes, yeah, that's like one of the main ones, but it was like also the big factor is Oh, like which the lines as we'll be going through
Right,
further a bit. The big factor involved with these lines is if they got dark, light, or fire in their grave,
right.
and also which type of disruption would be the most effective against them.
Sure.
Like during their crackback, like there's decks like I remember when Bird Up was huge. I mill Gizmek a lot because that Underworld Goddess spot removal, and then the literal Monster Reborn negate effect with the most crucial are just making Appaloosa. But as we go through these slides, I can elaborate further and even talk about like certain matchups.
Yeah, because we have the ability to go and get that draw and then attack again, and then you can always, with the Golden Lord line, go in the Cyberdark and the core into IP, and then you can use the Gizmek and the core to go into IP as well. And again, this is all about simplified game states and really just playing that mid-rangey deck that we all love. This is why even Dragon gets away with just going Seals Pass sometimes, because just having the interruption, a lot of times, especially if you crack the board, is really important, because that gives you a simplified game state that can really go a long way, especially if you can keep tempo. And cards like the Golden Lord, which is really nice to come back and be like the 3500 beat stick that it is, or the Gizmek Orochi can really help you with that grind game and always give you a monster to play with. So that's the reason why I really like this strategy.
Oh yeah, I agree. And it's I remember when I was like running through the math of this with the core and realm lines, in particular, hypothetically with Golden Lord, it's a +3 in card advantage, which is if you don't contact use hypothetically, because core adds realm, and we're not going to count realm as a +1 because after it's physically on field and resolves, it doesn't really do much. Even though it is relevant for your crackback with Golden Lord, where you're, during the following turn, you usually send realm for special out Golden Lord. But usually, what I consider the quote unquote relevant card advantage is core essentially leads into Cyberdark body, Golden Lord body, and a draw one. And that's a huge swing in tempo. And even though in this current meta isn't as relevant, but if you contact fuse, that's even more tempo your way, all off of one normal summon. You
Yeah.
got 5 other cards in your hand.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty nuts. Whenever you can even get like a card or two above your opponent in card advantage, a lot of times it's just really hard for your opponent to dig themselves out of that hole. And that's another thing where I really enjoy this too, because we're going to be moving on past the standard line. We're going to be moving into what happens when you have like a Golden Lord and an IP, or if you have like your Cyberdark and Masquerena. It really does depend on which line you want to go. A lot of times, if you just have the Golden Lord, you can always just go into your Unicorn for that simplified game state. But if you do have the ability to reborn the Gizmek, as we were talking about earlier, you can go into your Appaloosa if it hurts your opponent more. You have the ability to reborn Gizmek and then go into your Underworld to deal with any problematic cards on your opponent's board. The other really cool thing is that if you want to do the Unicorn play, then you can at least keep your Cyberdark on board for the crackback as well.
Yep, exactly. And that's huge because with the unicorn spin and the Golden Lord mills subsequently, it all just keeps adding up really fast. And plus, even though it like doesn't happen too much, the fact Underworld Goddess can be a dark ruler no more on the field
True.
does come up at times too. It's like rare. Like I can maybe count less than 2 hands how many times that's actually been relevant, but it's just icing on the cake, essentially.
See, I really like Underworld Goddess as well, because a lot of people don't know, but she negates Reborns from the Grave too. So like that's also pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I remember one of the huge reasons why I put Underworld Goddess in is if I were like Forbidden Droplets, a DPE, I could not only like link off DPE if I'm doing the link climbing route,
Right.
But if I want to knock out our boss monster and make their DP irrelevant anyway, I would link with our boss monster, which back then, when this came up a lot, especially because back at the case tournament, I didn't summon gods as much. It was usually I would link away with Barone, make goddess, punch over a DP, negate DP, grave effect.
So good.
And yeah, board's cleared, and you don't have to worry about both threats anymore.
Yeah, that's actually just so good. And then also DP, the card itself doesn't target, so Underworld is not affected by that, which is also really cool.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so Underworld is a really good card. It's like $20. If you don't have one, pick it up, please. Like, just keep one in your binder. Just have it handy, because it's like, if you can play it, you should. Like, it's just a cool card. There's some formats where it's more relevant than others, but it's still like one of those things that's really unexpected, and it can help you out really much. I've played it several times when I was playing like combo, and it feels so good to drop it. But that's easily one of my favorite cards. It's just really underrated.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it blew my mind because I picked up my Goss back when it was like $30. I was like, this card is only 30. It feels like at least a $50 card. Like the card was constantly overperforming for me.
True, it's really solid. We're gonna be jumping into all those charmers as we were talking about as well, because I feel like they're really important to talk about here. So we definitely play the Lina, the Hida, the Dark, and they all have specific purposes here. One, the fact that you're playing the Golden Lords, so you have the light attribute, you're playing the Gizmek for the Dark, and then you also can use either the Cyberdarks that you started with to turn them into an Almirage, or even the Core, just to get that fire in for the Hida. So you have a lot of options if you want to go for the bigger play. I really like this a lot. I think that's really cool to be having the addition of all the Charmers. It just gives you so many different options in the game.
Oh yeah, and a huge option that recently got opened up in light of the Dark Charmer is if I contact fuse with the core now, I can go into the Dark Charmer with the Mega Fleet.
Yep.
And that's like a pretty huge option when it comes to sequencing plays at times, where now I don't have to debate, oh, do I want to contact fuse and go Omraj for Hida anymore? Like, usually they have a Dark Monster in Grave. And I'm like, all right, contact fuse. Later down the line, make Dark Charmer with the Mega Fleet. It's like all those little additions add up to huge payoffs.
Yeah, I really do like these a lot, and I'm going to be going over these lines with you here as well. So if the Charmer line happens here, the one thing you have to realize is that Realm gives you the additional normal. So you have Core, and you'll have your Cyberdark, and then depending on which line you go, I personally really love the Gizmek line because it gives you that additional monster. So if you do see that Ash Blossom in your opponent's grave, or like a Long Wand, or just another fire, you can go ahead and use Hida to summon it, and then you can go ahead and summon back your Gizmek, and then you have the options to go into your Underworld Goddess or an Appaloosa, because remember, this would be like after the battle phase, and you're trying to set up a board for your opponent, which is always a really nice option for you. And also you have the ability to reborn into a hand trap, and then go the Hulk Selene line, and then go into the Appaloosa if you want to do that as well. So there's definitely a lot of different options that you have with the Charmers in general.
Oh yeah, and it's like for context because, of course, right, people seeing just the blank deck list. For those that weren't familiar with going second Sky Striker and Selene line, that's why I play the one effect Veiler in the main deck. It's the best target for that line. And plus, it's just like also with the Charmers at times. Usually against like a good chunk of decks, they either have like a light, fire, or dark charmer. And that's what kind of led to an ongoing joke among like some of my teammates where they jokingly said Alex says our disruption because I just break a board and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just snag your light, fire, dark boss monster. And at the case tournament, twice I stole the new fire level 10 Sword Soul Synchro. and that just sealed the game. Like they were like, oh, they're just looking down at it, and they couldn't break past it.
There's I always see like a lot of people too who are like, well, you have like the one Veiler. What happens if you open it and then you can't go into your Hulk into Selene play? But the cool thing is that the Charmers are spellcasters. So then at that point you can just summon any fire and then go straight into your Selene, then reborn the Veiler that you already used. So I really like that too, and it's not really making you lose any card advantage by opening it by any means.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like the only time the one of failure ratio can be rough immediately is if you banished it off of Gizmek.
Yeah.
And usually usually if I'm trying to be cautious and I know for a fact I'm going to the Selene line, usually I go for Golden Lord Mill in that case. So it's kind of feels like it should be worth mentioning that sure, Gizmek hypothetically leads to quote unquote more versatile, more cracked disruption in the sense that expands your options. But it also comes at a risk of banishing the engine cards, but it's also Golden Lord draws you a card. So you could draw into hand traps or cards like Droplet and such.
Yeah, it's really strong. And so there's a lot of information that you just have in the deck too, because you've been playing it for so long. You've been playing it at different tourneys, and just all the theory that you've been able to just put into this deck is just amazing. And it's the same way I feel when I'm playing Striker, right? Like I've been playing the deck for way too long, and it's just something that it's just really hard to put down because it's like it feels good to us to play those decks because there's something that we're really comfortable with. So along with that, I want to do a bit of a Q&A with you because I want to pick your brain a little bit on some questions that are pretty commonly asked, I'm sure. So let's just hop right into those questions and just kind of talk about, especially the first one here, like why do you feel like it's better to go second than going first, especially in like a mid-rangey type deck?
All right, so this is like I get this a lot from Cyberdark players, specifically because a lot of them like to play cards like Invasion. They like to play cards like the Field Spell. And here's the reason why I prefer going second instead of going first with Cyberdark specifically is the main flaw with Cyberdarks is inherently on their own, they do nothing. And I mean quite literally nothing other than putting their bodies on field going first. Like if you were to open Realm into Cannon into Cyberdark, is like, all right, that's cool, 24 beater, but what was that going to cause the opponent to worry about in this modern meta game?
That's fair.
And so that all changes completely when you're going second. All of a sudden, when you're going second with the Cyberdarks, when you have the access to the battle phase, all the Cyberdark engine essentially becomes is a giant foolish burial to get the extra body on field into link climb. And compare that like going first strategies that try to bank on invasion. Even invasion, right? The quote unquote good card is dependent on you having an already established board state to go off. Whereas comparatively, if you're going second with the deck, all you need to do is have core realm resolve, discard cannon, normally Cyberdark punch, compared to all these cards that may be bricky and just reliant on you already going.
So with that too, do you ever feel like going second that you're ever at like a disadvantage just because there's other decks that can put up a bigger board? Like, do you find it harder to play through negation, or do you think that it's relatively fine with the deck?
So this is where kind of respecting probability really does come into play. Yes, there are like I would be lying if was like, oh no, like I'm not scared of any deck. There's a reason why there were so many staples and board breakers is because a lot of the meta, in particular the Brave Engine decks, can be scary going up against. So it's but does it feel like an uphill battle? Not necessarily because I play so many of those. Like if I'm recalling, it's like a 95% chance if you play 18 cards to at least open one of those cards,
Right.
where most of them are pretty relatively high impact too, especially in the current list. So it really does depend on the meta. Like, because with going second decks in general, there's some formats that are more friendly towards them compared to others. For this current one, I would say it is definitely above average hard. Like, I wouldn't say compared to Chicago, at least, a Rongo format where I was on Cyberdark, it isn't nearly hard as those for obvious reasons, but it's still like you need to respect whatever meta board are making, and you need to adapt accordingly.
So, as you talk about the meta and the different decks that are scary versus the ones that aren't scary, what do you find are the hardest matchups and what are the easiest matchups for you?
All right, so easiest right off the gate, I would say our other mid-range decks are decks like Dragon Link or decks like Evil Twin, where it's like a lot of decks that, oh, contact fusion is not only relevant against, but usually my staple lineup hits them really hard, and you're able to just out tempo them immediately because because one is I'm going second, so I get an extra card, but then factor in my normal summons a +3 and all these other additional factors like the amount of board breakers and hand traps I'm playing, it all adds up. And so I would say mid range for sure. Scariest, and this has always been the case with cybers. Usually, a good chunk of combo decks are the scariest because if you get unlucky, like extremely unlucky, like I said, like 95% chance to open up hand trap and our board breaker in an 18 card like board breaker. If you don't open any of those nor draw into any for turn, you borderline almost can give your opponent a win at times. Like when, especially if you're hypothetically playing, let's say, against PK Brave. But if my opening hand is like a bunch of starting cards, then they go, all right, Riot Armisia, DP Scythe Block. It's like, what can you do about that?
That's like when I open too many Ray and not enough board break. It's I
Exactly.
feel it. I feel it. It's definitely unfortunate, but it's when the decks pop off, they pop off, and then when you brick and you can't see what you need, it's just unfortunate. We just call that variance. So it's
Exactly. It's all variants, and that's where, like, I know, especially at the surface, when people do see, oh, I'm going second, I always have to tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm playing all these staple cards here for a reason. And sure, there may be some games where I may not open them, but as the results show from the case tournament, I do see them way more times than I do not.
That is fair. We have a couple more questions for you as well. So like when you're playing your list, I know the same way I play my list. I'm always thinking about, hey, like, is there other things that can come out? Are there other things that can go in? Or do you see any changes being done in the future? Any cards that you know of coming out that could really impact the deck?
Right, so right off the gate, and this is going to be by far the easiest answer for any machine deck under the sun,
Yeah,
Therian.
Darian, yeah.
Um, yeah, that engine is,
Crazy.
yeah, it's kind of right with the Doctor Order. It's like my ideal dream engine all wrapped in one, because on the same slide, right, it also has how do you determine the engines you play. So Therian, and it kind of will tie into this huge. Like, Therian checks off the boxes to me because usually when I'm looking for an engine, like, because people see me use Dogmatica, people see me use DPE, usually the two things I look for is I want to them to not only extend, but I want them to end on disruption themselves. Like DP, for example. It can outbreak a board, it extends my plays. Dogmatica's check off that boxes too, where oh, they hypothetically don't take up my normal summon unless somehow there's no monster special from the extra deck on the field, which rarely ever came up. And then Therian checks off that box because Therian King Regulus doesn't take up my normal summon and it's a disruption. Sure, it can be a little bit hypothetically bricky because you need that machine engrave, but I play so many Rhodas, so many machines as it is, and just like cards like Cannon, right? That can just lead a machine where it's good. It would be rare. It would be extremely unlucky, I would imagine, where King Regulus is just a routine Garnet.
Yeah, I mean, I plan on playing it in Striker, so it's pretty good for what it is. You know,
Yeah,
it's very simple card design, and I really love that because it's just a good one-for-one negate. So I think it's gonna be very good for the game, and especially for decks like ours.
absolutely. I 100% can agree with that.
So I know that we're all itching to see what we got in front of us, which is the brand new list from Alex. So let's go ahead and talk about your list. Let's kind of point out some of the bigger things that we're seeing here, especially the Ghost Reapers, which I'm sure is very much so catching a lot of people off guard here. Let's kind of talk about what you got going on.
Yeah, so basically, compared to last week's list, people definitely notice in the grand scheme of things, while things are mostly similar, it's a relatively overhaul in the sense that, oh, now I'm playing DPE package. And there's a reason why it all ties in Ghost Reaper. I was discussing with some of my teammates and friends about Ghost Reaper this format. Ghost Reaper is broken. And I was just like, all right, against PK Brave, if I snipe DPE out, they're gonna really struggle setting up the scythe lock. Like, sure, they hypothetically can still pull it off, but it isn't nearly as smooth. And the biggest thing is you don't really have to worry about DP recurring all the time. And so the biggest thing in regards to what people see here is between the side deck and the main deck, one huge thing I was going for is none of these hand traps lose to the Brave package, or Adventure package is what we call it in TCG. Like, not a single one of them. And that was like very intentional because everyone's on some sort of Brave deck. And even if you're not on Brave, a lot are playing Anaconda and Howl. So even pure prank kids play Anaconda so they can mill the Thunder Dragon Fusion at times. And so I just kind of, when I realized how good Reaper was, I was like, all right, what are my targets going to be for it? And so the targets you see are Dual Do, DP, Anaconda, and Howl.
I actually have a question about that. Do you think that Doodle Doo is more impactful than hitting Meow Mew?
Yeah. I even talked about to one of my buddies that's like huge on prank kids about it. And if you were to snipe the Doodle, they get, sure, they can move a little bit, but it isn't nearly like as oppressive. Like, literally all they can do really is like link, climb, and bow. And off the cuff, because I'm not like a prank kids player, I don't think they have an inherent way of fusion other than Bow Wow adding it to your hand during your turn. And it's just like, all right, cool, have a quick play in your hand.
Sure.
So all they pretty much, I think they can end on, unless they hard open fusion, would literally be like the Griffin and Bow Wow, you don't have to deal with the board wipe. Whereas if you hit Meow Mew, if they were to open a Prank Kids Fusion play,
Right.
they're just like, all right, cool, I'm going to continue on as regular. Whereas if you snipe the Doodle, it's like, all right, cool, go Meow Mew. What are you going to do from here?
That's fair. I just wanted to ask because I've heard both sides of the argument, so I'm always curious whenever I see a Meow Mew or a Doodle, because it's just like it's such a different line of thought, right? Because it's either like you hit the Meow Mew and then they like really can't play the game unless they open up Double Kid Fusion on top of the 9 cards they just added their deck for the Brave. Or if you hit the Doodle, then they have no way to recur on their own turn. Also, they don't get the search because they have to wait on Bow, and then Bow only adds back on your opponent's turn. So it's definitely really cool to hear both sides of the argument there.
Oh, yeah, I consider both. Like, originally, when I was throwing in Reaper for a Prank Kids target, right, as well. I originally was on Meow Mew because of the Al Emancipator deck too that occasionally pops up at locals that use the Prank Kids sub engine.
Right.
But my buddy was like, hey, if you just run into them, you just run into them, and usually a good handful are on DP anyway. So it wouldn't be like a complete waste.
I mean, even in that build, they just use the Prank Kids to link climb to Appaloosa, so you still have the Reaper for the Appaloosa.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, I was just like, all right, no matter what, I have a Reaper target to hit them against anyway. So if I'm facing down, and I will just say it right now, I think, kind of tying it back to the earlier question, a hard matchup, Adventure Prank Kids is scary.
It is. It is very scary.
I don't think people give that deck enough credit at times. Like a bunch of one-card starters on top of just being able to link line, just one-card starters with the Brave engine for the Omni Negate checks off so many of their boxes.
And a bunch of utility.
Yeah, it's like lack of garnets too.
Yeah.
Like the deck is hyper consistent, and it's like, oh, who cares about Scythe Lock when you got Omni Negate board wipe, and in particular the Adventure Prank Kids player I went up against, he was able to set up double fusion, which was huge because if I were to droplet his Griffin in the Bow Wow, right? He still had a way to board wipe me because he set up double fusion.
So in your side too, sorry, I see, is that Invasion?
Yes.
Okay, so
Invasion.
There's a lot of people I've heard of that really love maining that. Is there a reason why it's in your side?
Yes, and actually one of the YouTube comments actually got the exact right answer on this. And the answer is cards only good against back row decks, and it's only good going first.
Sure.
So I have 4 going first cards, and that's Invasion and Shared Ride, which we're both on Shared Ride. That card's ridiculous. Even yesterday at a tournament, I was like, people Cosmic or Twin to Shared Ride, and you're like, God, you're locked out anyway. Essentially. Yeah, literally. But Invasion, though, kind of tying it back in Invasion is ridiculous against Outledge, especially. Because Outledge, right, tries to end on a bunch of floodgates, and here's what literally happens. When I do my opening line, because I opt to go first against Outledge, I usually try to go core and sub Invasion, and usually the way you can sub Invasion is if you open emergency core or claw realm, basically 2 of any Rhoda in your deck can lead in a realm. And the reason why realm is as huge as it is every turn is essentially like a artifact moral attack, where you're blowing up 1 card on the field. However, on the following turn, where you don't have any equips anymore, you can equip a machine or dragon from your grave. And the reason why that's super important is if Eldritch is trying to get cheeky, right, and use like Ice Dragon's Prison, you can chain Invasion and select their target equip, or if they don't have IDP, just re-equip Cannon to your Cyberdark and mill Gizmek and Golem Lord respectively, depending on which route you want to go.
That's so good, just being able to mill any monster, like so
Oh
so
yeah.
good. You can mill like snow, or you have the one of token collector inside, you mill token collector, like you have a lot of cool options that you can send.
Oh yeah, and it's also like really huge because Invasion, right? Once you get that tempo rolling, Eldritch is just kind of sitting there a lot of time where I usually time my Invasion pops when they're trying to floodgate, or if they're going like Conquistador, you can go, all right, chain Invasion, send cannon off, pop conk, and you're not popping my guy.
Right.
And it's just that constant pop draw one, or like, clawing back a Cyberdark equip guy from your grave back to your hand. It just constantly keeps racking up an advantage. But like I said, tying it all back to my beginning statements, I don't main it because I blind second. It's like, oh, if I'm facing down full board and open invasion, what's that gonna do for me?
That's fair. There's a lot of cards. Even if you look at like Flow and Reese, they have Scary Sea, which is really scary of a card. That card's terrifying, but no one really plays it, and that's because if you have even power cards like that, it's still a trap card. And if you get put going second, that's in your hand. You're really wishing that wasn't there. So like you only want to make sure those cards are in if you're going first, and you know you're going first. So that's really important just to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're thinking about cards like Invasion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, and this is gonna kind of be like one of the huge things I'm gonna emphasize to all the Cyberdark players or people interested in the deck. The most important thing regarding this deck list is consider it a template for the now mostly. But from this video, I just hope that I get across some of the core ideas, because as the meta shifts, you need to adjust accordingly if you're a blind second deck. Like
True.
I'm not going to be playing Ogre like a year from now. I'm not going to be playing Reaper a year from now, most likely. So if you're able to understand, all right, this is what I mainly try to do, and then as the meta shifts, find a way to adapt accordingly, then you're in a good spot. Like, because that's always, like, I'll tell you right now, out of my 2 years essentially playing Cybers competitively, what takes up 90% of my time isn't even so much the lines itself. It's usually my staple slots. It's like always like, which is the most optimal.
I spent 5 hours before that case tournament trying to figure out what my hand trap lineup was, and
Well,
it does take time.
oh yeah, well, not ironically, right? Even how I got my Chicago top, and this should show verbatim how important even a one card choice difference is. The night before a tournament with one of my teammates at the time, we had like a 4 hour debate between Gamma and Impern. And back then, Gamma was far less common. People thought, oh, you're playing Driver. It was bad. But I ultimately went with Gamma despite his recommendation, because no one knew outside the really in the know players what the Danger Thunder combo was. I was like, I read LP and the Guard Dragons. I'm like, all right, I want their bodies off the field.
Yeah.
Sure enough, that one Gamma slot paid off because I played against four true Dracos and Gamma bodied all of them.
Oh yeah, you take the
Like,
Draco off the field, they're all dead.
yeah, literally, that's like a prime example that I always give, where a lot of people are like, oh, my last card slot should be X, and they don't think much about it. I'm gonna be the first guy to say, take some time. Like, definitely take a little bit of time, think about the benefits a bit, and it quite literally can make the difference between bubbling and topping.
Yeah, it's especially going second, like you said, like your hand trap lineup, it really means the world. There's so many different hand traps that are just good and bad in so many different formats. Like how even 2 formats ago, Bell was the undisputed best hand trap. Like there's no way you weren't playing Bell in your main deck. It was the best. And then we move into the next format and we see like Ash was like the best. And now we're seeing like Ogre is really trying to find that spot. Still probably Ash, but Ogre is really up there. It's really good. And you see this trend with every format that we play in. There's always going to be something better to play. Right now we're playing Cosmics in the main because of things like Scythe. And then as that shifts out, then we'll see things like Cosmic drop from the main potentially. Especially even in my list, I'm playing Cosmics in my main because of that. It's just overlapping with things like Skill Drain. So it really depends on what your going second cards will be. Because like even this format, we see Lightning Storm just died out of everyone's list because this format Lightning Storm sucks, especially if you're playing against Eldritch and they have the Heavenly Prison. So you really got to keep that in the back of your mind as to what decks are you going to be playing against the most, what are you most afraid of, and what blind second cards are really going to help you. When the Leary deck was really good, I cut Pankratops because everything was non-targetable and there's no reason to play that. And then now it's back in the main. So it always shifts.
Oh yeah, it always shifts, and I know you can attest to this too, because we've been on the same deck for like years now,
Right.
pretty much. The biggest thing as well, if especially you're trying to run with a rogue deck option, is always be self-aware. Like that's like what I always tell people is like the most important things. Where if a staple slot or a certain card slot isn't working, and it's not getting the results you need, then that means it's probably not working, and you should probably adapt accordingly. Like I remember telling people, right? Especially at regionals. At regionals is where I literally play super experimental. And usually, if I get a top 8 right, that's like, all right, I should use whatever I use. But if I were a bubble right, I'm like, all right, something really needs a change here.
Yeah, there's probably like a hand trap or like a tech card that just wasn't working. That's me every time I play Talents. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is probably the reason. But yeah, there's so many different ways, especially when you're playing that rogue deck. One thing too about like Striker, and even Cyber in general, is like mid-range decks are something where you have to play perfect. Like if you start messing up, even like once can really affect how the game goes. And so if you
Oh,
are going to play a deck like this, you just really have to make sure that you are knowledgeable about your plays and what your matchups are.
oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like, especially with like the previous list and even somewhat of this one, right? There's like you need to not only be knowledgeable, but also your deck building for mid-range decks. You need to be pretty precise with them because since mid-range is all about tempo, if you're sitting on a Garnet, what are you gonna do? It's like you have such a big opportunity cost there, which is why, relatively speaking, compared to a lot of Cyberdark lists in particular, there's a lot less Garnets, a lot less win more cards. Like Power Bond isn't in my list. Chimera, like I said, isn't in there. And like I said, it's for that very reason where I'm a go second mid-range deck. I need to put the staples in to prevent my opponent from playing, need a board break, and I need to play on my best game all the time in order to have the tempo swing. And that said, that may sound like, oh, is the deck bad then? I no. Like it's like very rewarding when you are playing a mid-range deck, you play it perfectly, and then you just see that huge swing in card economy. It pays off, and it just takes a lot of patience in learning that too.
So I have one more question for you.
Yeah,
When your list came out and everyone saw it and everyone's like, wow, what a deck, right? You were
yeah.
playing Super Poly, and that was a very big point of talking conversation in the comment section. It was like, wow, Super Poly, like I got to pick up Super Polys. Those seem really good. What changed between now and then?
So the only reason why is Reaper targets. I
Sure.
even when I was talking to Mike right about it, I said if I could run Super Poly, and the Ghost Reaper targets, I would use both. And I like if someone did hypothetically do it without cutting down on the extra deck utility severely, I would do that. But what ultimately made me kind of cut Super Poly for now at least was sure at the case tournament in particular, it happened to be good because of my matchups. But if I went on a day right where Super Poly wasn't as good, it was relatively risky. And so I was like, all right, with something like Ghost Reaper, right? That flies under the Brave Engine, can prevent a combo from even going off to begin with. I was like gonna test that because even though this is my current list, isn't necessarily a final list. Like kind of my baseline for performance is that Super Poly Case tournament.
Sure.
If this list doesn't perform as consistently, then I will go back to it. And so I'm just kind of like, when people see current lists, don't think, oh, hey, this got overridden. This is more so like kind of to show that, yeah, even though this other list did really good, I'm trying to see if it could possibly be better in
That's
other
fair.
aspects.
That is fair.
So, but yeah, got any more questions for me?
So with this one, I really do think that it was just a really cool deck to feature and really being able to show off all the combo lines and really being able to show off how you play the deck and how you think while you're playing the deck, because I'm sure that's very valuable to many players out there who are just starting to learn and really trying to understand why you picked the cards that you chose. So I don't have more questions at this point, but I do just want to thank you so much for being on the channel and really being able to come out here and share your knowledge.
Oh, it's no problem at all. Like, I was very ecstatic when we went to the case tournament, right? And we saw each other. Like, even on like the pictures, right? People could tell probably I was off a long car drive. Like, I literally just arrived in town, right? And I remember I was like going in there and I was like, hey, if I do well, I will do a deck profile, right? And I honestly am very surprised, and I'm actually very happy that people like this deck. I ever since Realm got revealed, I was theory crafting this for a very long time, but because I don't play in remote dual offense, because one is I'm doing the CPA exams still, so, and now I'm in audit busy season, so that takes up a lot of time. But I was just really ecstatic to, through our video, right, showcasing the list that, yeah, I have a feat behind it now, and I was glad that you're able to provide both the previous one and this video to kind of give it the spotlight and show people that, yeah, this can indeed work, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity as well.
Yeah, you should have seen us. Like it was so funny. I walk in and I saw Alex, and I was like, "Alex, what's up?" Like it was like it's been such a long time since I've seen him, and it was just really cool to be back in person playing the game again, seeing old friends, and just really being able to have a good time in a case tourney. And then Alex pulled off the dub. So it's definitely cool to be back in the game and playing more in person than just online.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Plus, while I was there, I got rid of all that bulk. Like a lot of people saw me bringing like the 40 pounds of bulk in, so that was kind of funny.
Well, Alex, I want to thank you so much for being here. For everyone who's joining us today, we are about 200 subscribers away from 10,000 subs. We're going to be hosting a huge tournament at 10,000, doing another giveaway. We're going to be doing other celebratory things. If you want to be a part of my community, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, Twitch, join my Discord. If you are also needing a one-on-one session on Metafy, go ahead and look in the link description below. It's going to be a couple sessions that you'll see on there. So if you want to go ahead and message me on Discord, we can actually talk about them if you want like a customized session, and we'll figure out what works best for you. Alex, do you have any closing thoughts to the video today?
Nothing much other than just it was really a big pleasure being on here, and I will be taking a look at the comments to help provide clarifications where I can here and there. And yeah, I definitely hope you all enjoy, and especially considering if you watch this full in-depth video, I'm really thankful for you all taking the time to listen to this theory crafting. I hope your understanding of what I was trying to go for with this deck has improved.
Yeah, I really do appreciate it, and we're going to send it off now. So I do thank you for being here, and we'll catch everyone in the next video. Thank you.